I'm Patrick,
I'm Shavana.
and we're going to be talking about the DailyKenn project. So, basically, what is the DailyKenn? The DailyKenn is an online conservative news source that kind of compiles various links from across the web. I don't know if you guys have ever been on the Drudge Report before, but it's very similar to the way it operates in that, where it takes stories, from different sources like ABC, CNN, etc., links to that website, but it also picks out certain themes that are relevant in the conservative community. And so, with respect to our aims and goals in this project, we worked with Ken over the past couple of months to develop a plan so that he could have 100,000 hits on his website per day, which would allow him to basically do the thing full time. Right now he's at about 22,000, which isn't terrible for a website, but he's really looking to grow and expand into a much more stronger force in the online conservative news scene. So yes, as I said earlier, it's a growing conservative news source, and he wants 100,000 hits per day. The Drudge Report, which is probably one of the biggest competitors of the DailyKenn, tends to be pretty broad in its focus on conservative topics. Like they'll cover stuff like immigration, Obamacare, gay rights, gun rights, the whole kind of gamut of things. The DailyKenn's much more concentrated. You're going to see a lot of stuff dealing with Obamacare, gun rights, and race relations, and so he really focuses on that. And if you read his blog as well, he really, hones in on those topics. So it's a little more focused than the Drudge Report in that sense. So, as I said, it's a compiler of news, but the thing that makes DailyKenn different is he has a lot more original content in there. He does his own blog. He actually has like a media list where he does some videos. There's some podcasts. He even recommends movies for his viewers to watch, and he also has a thing called Ken's 10, which are 10 articles, and it changes on occasion. 10 articles he thinks are very essential. So he kind of espouses a political worldview more. It's much more branded. I like to look at it kind of like you take an online you take a conservative radio show and you put it on the internet into a site. So, marketing and distribution. As a website, obviously, if you have the internet, you can access the DailyKenn, which is what makes our project different than a lot of yours, because we're not dealing with a brick and mortar situation. Likewise, Ken has a very loyal readership. You can see up here, he gave me a stat. 1 hour, 49 out of 50 hits were direct, and a direct hit is where you actually type in the URL into the browser. So people that like the DailyKenn are coming back. I mean, that's 95% of hits there. It's pretty astounding. So, okay. So pest. Ken's main coverage areas like healthcare and gun control are huge topics in the political arena. So looking at the pest analysis, this political side of things is very important to it. And Ken's outspokenness on these topics makes him a very unique news source. He is very, very strong in his opinions and beliefs, and these are the topics that are in the news every day, very relevant to the Conservative Party, the Republican Party, the movement here in the United States. Pest analysis, economical. One of the nice things about the website is you don't have to worry about overhead as much. He has to worry about server space, bandwidth, dealing with ads and such, but he doesn't have to worry about being kind of tied down to a brick and mortar location, which is a real big boon, especially after the crash in 2008. And so the biggest economical factor is drawing in advertisement revenue and figuring out a way, what's hot in the economy now, and where can I just make this happen so I can draw in some profit. Pest analysis on the social side. This is one of the weaker points. Conservatives tend to be older than liberals, and a poll from the Pew Research Organization said that the average registered Republican is 2 years older than their Democrat counterparts. And so because of that, Ken has to kind of bridge the technological gap. With younger people, millennials and such, always online, smartphones, Twitter, what say you. But with the older people, he has to be much more, I guess, intensive about targeting them and finding out where their electronic use is and figuring out what that means for an advertising plan. Finally, technological. The online news industry is really growing. I mean, more people are turning off the TV and canceling their paper subscriptions to go online. It's very accessible. Most of the time it's free unless there's a paywall. And you also have a much greater diversity of sources. So as the internet really becomes universal and really omnipresent, as it's basically almost there at this point, you know, he's going to have the benefit of just a much wider audience that, you know, prefers news on demand, which, you know, an internet source can provide. So the technological trends definitely do seem to be, you know, helping out what the DailyKenn is about and helping out, you know, their ability to compete. So.
Okay, now I'm going to go with the SWOT analysis. Kenn has a lot of strengths to offer. There's a variety of articles that are covered. Though the main focus, as we talked about, is just on gun control, healthcare, and race relation issues. The site itself is actually really straightforward, pretty easy to use and navigate. They also have real-time updates, which just means that you know, it gives current information. It's keeping track of like events that are happening right now or recently. And also, as Patrick mentioned, the 10 must-read list. That's another thing that a lot of its competitors didn't have. So it's making use of that. And the conservative angle, this is actually kind of subjective. It kind of depends on the audience. Conservatives will obviously, they'll probably be more likely to view a site that's conservative than like a liberal audience. So that's kind of depends. There's also some weaknesses. It has a lot of competitors that are really strong, well established. The Judge Report was talked about, Fox News, Wall Street Journal, New York Post. You know, all those are really well known. And Kenn has to kind of try to figure out how to get audiences to listen to him and come to his site. And also the conservative angle, you know, liberal audiences are going to be less likely to want to listen or view the site. Okay, some opportunities we have. Definitely taking advantage of social media. Since it's online, it's a lot easier to do that. You know, having a Facebook, Twitter account. YouTube would be somewhat harder, a little bit more expensive for him. And also, since there's, as Patrick also mentioned, a growing demand for news online, people aren't watching TV. You know, they're not really reading newspapers as much, especially younger audiences. So taking advantage of that would be good for them. And it's just a huge source of information. That's where people are going to get their news online. Some threats, as we mentioned earlier, is just lack of exposure. People haven't really heard about it. It's not well known, which, you know, could definitely just be a problem for him. And he doesn't have a lot of advertising on other news sites, which, like, if you're more well known, you have a lot more money to be able to do that, and it's really expensive. Like, if he has to place an ad on another site, he has to pay like $35 or something to do that, and he only gets a certain amount of money for the hits, and it's really not that much. So he wouldn't really break even. He might actually lose money to do that. So that's maybe not the best way for him to go. And also another threat is just the shift in attitudes. You know, I think our society is becoming a little bit more secular. It's just becoming more liberal. People are. It could go both ways though. Kind of half and half, but especially in younger generations though. They're just more liberal minds. People are may not be likely to listen to him.
All right, SMART analysis. So SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. Specific. Kenn's goal of 100,000 days is 100,000 hits a day. Sorry, is incredibly specific. But at the outset, he really didn't give us a timeline, and so you know we talked from a bit. We tried to nail down that information, but we were the ones that really developed, you know, basically just going from scratch what the timeline means and what it's going to look like. So yeah, it's a pretty specific goal, but you know it also requires a little bit of growth in terms of the depth of it. In terms of measurable, being online, you can get instant feedback on hit growth as well as on analysis. So what that means is that, like, let's say we implement our plan, our advertising plan. He can look at his stats online and produce graphs or run all sorts of statistical analysis on it, and he'll know, more or less right away what's working, what's not. And even more importantly, with online ads, you can actually click on the ad and see like how many hits this ad has gotten you. So he's really got he's really got a wealth of data that he can access easily. Smart analysis in terms of attainable. 100,000 hits in 2 years, 2 years is our timeline, is workable if the website can become hot. Websites tend to grow in a more parabolic fashion, like, it grows exponentially, more or less. Facebook's trends have confirmed that. I think they, it took them 6 years to get to 250 million users, and then it took them 3 to get to 500 or even over that. So once you get that momentum going, it's a lot easier for you to, add on to that. Realistic, in an era when internet news is becoming of paramount importance, 100,000 hits is actually a pretty small share of what, basically what internet traffic is. So I think we both agree that it's very realistic in that sense. And then finally, timely. 2 years gives enough time to work the strategy we outlined as well as change if need be. It also gives Ken some chances to kind of adjust to growing readership. And as we talk about our strategy ahead, he might have to do that as a part of our contingency plan. So yeah, it'll give him some time to analyze what's working, what's not, who needs to be targeted. And with the way politics is right now and the way movements pop up, like 2009, the Tea Party, if something that big pops up in the conservative realm, he's probably going to want to change his strategy. So 2 years will give him some time to, figure that out. But it also, sets a definite goal instead of just, hoping for 100,000 hits. So there's some, there's a nice framework to that.
Okay, now to the segmentation. Since it's online, anyone who has access to the internet can basically go on the site. So it's harder to segment it based on geography, though we do recommend just staying within the U.S. And then these statistics are basically, they give you a better idea kind of what the audience, the viewership, what the target market is made up of, who's types of people who are going to be actually looking at the site. This is from the Pew Research Center. 61% of conservatives are over the age of 50, so demographically most of the viewers are going to be just older. 67% of Republicans live in the Midwest, so it's kind of, again, hard to target just in the Midwest since it's on the internet, but it gives you a better idea of kind of where these people are located. And then also as conservatives, 65% are keeping up with government policies. They're participating in politics. And the preferred media for them, for the older generations, is still TV and newspapers. But that's, I think, changing right now just because of the internet and social media. So based on those statistics, then the average age of the reader is going to be 45 to 60. And to put a generational label, they would be the baby boomers. So anyone born after World War II. So 1945 to 1965. So the target market then would be, middle class, white, conservative males, essentially. And what characterizes a lot of, this kind of age group, especially baby boomers, is hard work. They definitely value their career, just their professional accomplishments, and they're also really politically involved. They keep track with what's going on with, national, international events, probably more than younger people do. So, just to reiterate the target audience again, and then how the product, or how the website should be positioned. Since it has so much competition going, it's important that it shows itself as being informed, accurate. And, there's so many different sources of information. People want what's reliable, what's the truth, essentially. If it really positions itself as that, then audiences will, keep the audience it has, and it will hopefully retain more viewers. Alright, and then the product life cycle. So it's not like a tangible product really or service. It's hard to do kind of growth, maturity, decline. And a lot of like the performance it's going to do in the marketplace is pretty much based on interest in politics, national, international events, things like that. So it's somewhat hard to control for him. And also just if people are going to be politically active, will determine like if they're going to keep going on sites like this. Okay, so implementing this, as you said, like we put 2 years down for like if they can actually reach his goal. We're giving him 2 years. So if he does this as soon as he can, starts implementing these kind of advertising ideas, taking advantage of social media, and also just calculating his costs and sticking to his schedule. You can do this by creating small goals. So just monthly goals. If he can, try to get, maybe 100 hits, a week or a month or something. Just kind of doing that instead of trying to do all in one. And also this will test out the efficiency of how well these strategies are working. And we also thought like just redesigning the website a little bit, just making it more visually attractive and aesthetically appealing might help. And also just charting the progress and effectiveness of these strategies. It's just a good way to see how well they're working. And of course monitoring and evaluating the performance of how it's doing.
All right, so the contingency plan. Our plan is that we had Ken, basically we're going to have to redesign the website, make it a little more user-friendly. And then we wanted him to really target evangelicals because they're such a big part of the conservative community. And so we were just going to see if he could, focus on, advertising and reaching out to those groups. If that doesn't work, basically our plan is to find out what groups are hot and what groups need to be targeted more effectively and go from there. And so he's going to need to be in tune to major conservative movements that spring up suddenly. So basically, with our contingency plan, we're not changing the basis of what we're doing with the online advertising through forums and smaller blogs. But what we are doing is we're going to, analyze what is working in terms of the advertisements, what topics and themes are getting more attention than others. And so, he's just basically going to have to keep a really good demographic monitor on what's going on in the conservative blogosphere and all those other, media forms that are out there. So.
Just a way to evaluate this. We said surveys and interviews. This might be kind of hard to do, at least interviews especially. But putting surveys maybe on his website, just kind of a way to see if customer or viewers are liking the setup, if there's anything you can add to it that they want. And also just monitoring the action of his competitors, see if they are doing what he implemented, if it's actually affecting them. If they don't feel threatened by it, then they won't do anything. And also probably the most effective way to do it is to evaluate how many hits he's getting. So looking at current hits, versus past hits and see if they're increasing or decreasing or they're just staying the same is also a really good way to see if his strategies are working.
All right, that concludes our presentation on the DailyKenn. We thank you for listening, and I just want to ask if you guys have any questions.